January 1st, 2018. As families across Michigan celebrated the fresh start of a new year, champagne glasses still warm from midnight toasts, first responders rushed to a mobile home in Sumpter Township. What they discovered inside would haunt them for the rest of their careers. A 4-year-old girl, unresponsive, her small body covered in burns so severe that her skin had literally melted into the bathtub drain. Her name was Gabby Barrett. The emergency call had come in at 10:43 that morning, delayed by 36 critical minutes after the child had first been found unconscious. By the time help arrived, it was already too late. The responding officers would later struggle to describe what they had witnessed, one detective simply saying, "In 20 years on the force, I've never seen anything like it." The Washtenaw County medical examiner was more direct. After performing the autopsy, he would declare it the worst child death case he had seen in 27 years of practice, a statement that in the clinical world of forensic pathology speaks volumes about the suffering this little girl endured. What you're about to watch is a true account of a real crime. This is not simply a story. It happened to a real child named Gabby Barrett, a child who should have been protected by the very people who inflicted unimaginable pain upon her, a child whose short life was defined by a betrayal so profound it's difficult to comprehend. This is her story. Welcome to the True Crime Evidence Files. Tonight's case will shake you to your core. Take a moment to hit subscribe, drop a like, and please let us know where you're watching from. And now we begin. The mid-2010s cast a long shadow over rural Michigan. As the rest of the nation slowly recovered from economic recession, communities like Sumpter Township remained caught in its grip. Factory closures, declining populations, and limited opportunities created pockets where hardship wasn't just common, it was expected. Sumpter Township sits just 30 miles southwest of Detroit, close enough to be considered part of the metropolitan area, yet worlds apart in many ways. Home to fewer than 10,000 residents, it's a place where neighbors might know your name, but not necessarily what happens behind closed doors. Like many rural communities, Sumpter Township features clusters of mobile homes, affordable housing options that offer residents privacy, but also isolation. It was in one such community that Gabby Barrett lived and died, in a trailer where the nearest neighbor might hear a child's cry, but assume it wasn't their place to intervene. The combination of economic hardship and rural isolation creates perfect conditions for tragedy. When social services are stretched thin and poverty is widespread, vulnerable children can fall through the cracks. In communities where families struggle to survive, paying attention to a neighbor's business becomes a luxury few can afford. 2 years before Gabby's death, in May 2016, police had already encountered troubling signs at the mobile home where she would later die. Responding to a domestic assault call, officers found the residence filthy and full of drugs and weapons. At the time, Gabby wasn't living there. She was staying with her grandmother in another jurisdiction. But this early warning sign would prove tragically prophetic. What authorities couldn't have known then was that this same home would later become the site of unimaginable abuse. Abuse that would escalate left unchecked until it claimed the life of a 4-year-old girl who had barely begun to live. Gabrielle Rhea Barrett entered the world in July 2013, a healthy baby girl born to Candice Diaz and Kyle Barrett. In those early days, there was genuine hope for a normal, loving family life. The family initially lived with Candice's adoptive mother, Cynthia Diaz, creating a home environment with multiple caregivers. Photographs from this period show a smiling, chubby-cheeked infant surrounded by attentive family members. Those who knew Gabby as a toddler described a naturally affectionate child who loved animals and formed easy bonds with others. When she started preschool, teachers noticed her unusual friendliness. She was known for hugging her classmates and forming quick connections with the adults around her. School was her escape from reality. Prosecutor Bruce Ellie would later tell the court, She wanted to be connected to something. But the family unit began to fracture when Gabby was just 6 months old. Candice and Kyle's relationship deteriorated, leading to their separation. Kyle Barrett moved out, but maintained he wanted to remain involved in his daughter's life. "I got to give her a kiss and a hug and say I loved her," Kyle would later tell reporters, describing the last time he saw his daughter in September 2017, just months before her death. Financial struggles complicated Kyle's involvement. Court records revealed he owed over $2,600 in back child support, a situation he attributed to being jobless, homeless, and without money. Despite this, family members maintain he tried to stay connected to Gabby whenever possible. Without money. Despite this, family members maintain he tried to stay connected to Gabby whenever possible. To understand Gabby's fate, one must understand her mother's history. Candice Diaz carried deep trauma from her own childhood. At just 4 years old, the same age Gabby would be when she died, Candice survived a devastating house fire that left her with burns over 50% of her body. Court documents revealed that Candice's grandmother had fled the burning home, leaving the child behind. This abandonment, combined with the physical and emotional scars from the fire, shaped Candice's development. Her parents were later charged with criminal abuse and sentenced to 12 months in prison, after which Candice was placed with her adoptive mother. Without proper treatment for her trauma, Candice developed severe mental health issues, including bipolar disorder, PTSD, depression, and anxiety, conditions she would later admit she left untreated. As often happens in cases of generational trauma, the cycle that began in Candice's childhood found a new victim in her daughter. For Gabby Barrett, life began with promise and love, but would tragically end in a household where love had been replaced by cruelty, where the very parent who should have protected her from harm became the architect of her suffering. Within months of separating from Kyle Barrett, Candice Diaz began a new relationship with 28-year-old Brad Edward Fields. The relationship progressed with alarming speed, with Fields moving into Candice's home almost immediately. Fields brought with him a history of violence and controlling behavior. Neighbors would later report seeing Candice with unexplained bruises shortly after Fields entered her life. Court records revealed Fields had displayed similar patterns in previous relationships, quick to anger and quick to use intimidation to maintain control. Both had severe mental illnesses for which they admit they were not receiving treatment. Court documents would later state, while Candice struggled with bipolar disorder, PTSD, depression, and anxiety, Fields claimed to suffer from schizoaffective disorder, social anxiety, agoraphobia, and PTSD. This volatile combination, untreated mental illness, a history of abuse and substance abuse issues, created a powder keg environment. Police would later find cocaine in the home during their investigation. Candice's focus shifted dramatically after Fields moved in. Where she had once been attentive to Gabby, she now became increasingly dependent on Fields, often deferring to his decisions about household matters, including discipline. In May 2016, Sumpter Township police responded to a domestic violence call at the mobile home. What they found was alarming: a filthy residence with decaying food, dirty dishes, flies throughout it, dog urine on the floor, and dog feces in the children's room, according to police reports. Yet despite these conditions, no significant action was taken to protect Gabby. The dynamics in the household shifted further when Candice gave birth to the couple's daughter, Zoe. The difference in how the two children were treated became stark and unmistakable. Judge Vonda Evans would later describe this contrast during sentencing. "He, with your aid, killed your child and spared Zoe," she told Candice. "Zoe was never at risk of harm because you wanted to get rid of the problem, and that was Gabby." This sentiment was even reflected in family photos and holiday cards. On New Year's Eve 2017, the very night Gabby was suffering from catastrophic burns, The couple sent out cards featuring themselves and baby Zoe. Gabby was conspicuously absent. Brad Fields wasn't Gabby's father, and that distinction would prove fatal for the little girl caught in a household ruled by a man who saw her as an unwelcome reminder of her mother's past. In the twisted dynamics of their relationship, Judge Evans would later make a chilling comparison. In nature, male lions kill cubs that aren't their own and breed with the female. The logic that was practiced in their home. September 2017 marked a turning point in Gabby Barrett's short life. Up until then, she had been primarily living with her grandmother, Cynthia Diaz, with periodic visits to her mother's home. But that fall, everything changed when Gabby was enrolled in preschool and forced to move in with Candice and Brad Fields full-time. Within the classroom walls, teachers noted Gabby's unusual affection and desire for connection. What they couldn't have known was that school had become her only sanctuary, the only place where she wasn't subjected to escalating abuse. The warning signs had been visible a year earlier, when police responded to a domestic violence call at the trailer in May 2016. Officers documented deplorable living conditions, decaying food, flies throughout the home, animal waste in the children's bedroom, and drug paraphernalia. Weapons were also found in the residence. Yet despite this alarming visit, no meaningful intervention followed. Court records later revealed the horrifying dynamic that developed within the home. Text messages recovered from the couple's phones showed Fields bragging about beating Gabby, with Candice not only failing to intervene, but actively encouraging the abuse. "Give her a good beating," Candice texted Fields regarding her daughter. This explicit permission from a mother to abuse her child reveals how completely the protective parental bond had been severed. The punishments inflicted on Gabby defied comprehension. Judge Vonda Evans would later describe how Gabby was sentenced to an empty room as punishment when she wet her bed, a common response to trauma in children her age. She was forced to use a black garbage bag to keep warm. Brad threatened to drown the girl in his urine if her own urination issues continued, Judge Evans noted during sentencing. These weren't idle threats. Evidence showed Gabby was regularly beaten for normal childhood behaviors. The couple's abuse extended beyond physical violence. Prosecutors presented evidence that Gabby was given drugs to keep her compliant. Her diet was severely restricted, leading to rapid weight loss visible in the few photographs from this period. By age 4, Gabby suffered from complete dental decay, with all her teeth rotting, a clear sign of neglect that went unaddressed. Medical experts testified that this level of decay would have caused constant pain, making eating difficult and leading to malnutrition. Perhaps most disturbing was how the abuse became ritualized within the household routine. Court testimony revealed that if Gabby interrupted Brad's Call of Duty video game sessions, punishment was certain to follow. The psychological toll was equally devastating. Gabby was isolated, humiliated, and terrorized daily. She was denied the most basic comforts: warmth, safety, adequate food, and medical care. In their twisted logic, what Fields and Diaz called discipline was in reality a systematic campaign to break a child's spirit. Within the walls of that trailer, Gabby existed in a world of calculated torture disguised as discipline, where two adults methodically broke down a child's body and spirit. Her suffering remained largely invisible to the outside world until it was too late, hidden behind closed doors in a community where privacy often trumped protection. As we go into the most chilling details of this documentary, take a brief moment to like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, for more in-depth investigations and analysis of significant cases like this. As 2017 drew to a close, families across America prepared to celebrate the promise of a new year. In the Sumpter Township mobile home, New Year's Eve took on a different character altogether. That same day, Candice Diaz and Brad Fields had sent out holiday cards featuring themselves with baby Zoe. Gabby was nowhere to be seen in the family portrait, a symbolic erasure that foreshadowed the physical erasure to come. "Happy New Year," the card read, but the person that was missing was Gabby. Judge Evans would later observe, "Because you knew that Gabby wasn't going to make it another year." What happened on December 31st would later be pieced together through forensic evidence and the couple's contradictory statements. According to Candice's eventual account to police, Gabby had run her own bath water that evening, making it too hot and burning herself. This claim, that a 4-year-old with severe dental pain, malnutrition, and prior abuse had somehow drawn a scalding bath hot enough to cause catastrophic burns, defied medical and practical logic. Forensic experts would later determine the temperature needed to cause such severe burns would have required turning the water heater to unsafe levels. The burns Gabby suffered that night were not minor. They were immersion burns, the kind that result from being forcibly held in scalding water. The pain would have been excruciating, the kind that would cause any normal parent to immediately seek emergency medical attention. Yet no help was called. No trip to the emergency room. No call to 911. Instead, the injured child was put to bed, left to suffer through the night with third-degree burns covering significant portions of her body. New Year's Day, 2018 dawned with Gabby in agony. The burns had begun to blister and peel, a painful process that would have made even the slightest movement torturous. Rather than finally seeking medical attention, what happened next defies comprehension. According to court testimony, Candice forced Gabby into another bath that morning, with her skin already damaged and inflamed from the previous day's burns. This second immersion proved catastrophic. The mother claimed she ran Gabby's bath and placed Gabby into the tub after she filled it halfway. Court documents stated the mother then claimed she left Gabby alone in the tub and went to the kitchen to make pancakes. When Candice returned, she claimed to have found Gabby submerged up to her nose and pulled her from the tub as the child began vomiting. Only then did she call for Fields to help. What happened next reveals the couple's true priorities. According to Candice's statement, they noticed problems with Gabby at 10:05 a.m., yet the 911 call wasn't placed until 10:41 a.m., a 36-minute delay that prosecutors argued demonstrated callous indifference to Gabby's suffering. Those critical minutes weren't spent providing first aid or comforting the dying child. Instead, evidence suggested Fields was busy destroying evidence, literally peeling burned skin from Gabby's body and placing it in the drain. As Judge Evans would later describe in court, when first responders finally arrived, they found Gabby unresponsive on the bathroom floor. Her lungs contained vomit, indicating she had aspirated during her final moments. The burns were so severe that her skin had melted into the bathtub subdrain, and her big toe had completely detached from her foot. Medical examiners would determine that Gabby died from septic shock, her small body overwhelmed by infection that spread rapidly from her untreated burns to her vital organs. On the first day of 2018, while many families were celebrating fresh starts, Gabby Barrett's short life came to an excruciating end on the bathroom floor of a trailer home. At 10:45 a.m. on New Year's Day, Sumpter Township first responders arrived at the mobile home. CPR was already being performed by family members, but the responding officers immediately recognized they were facing something far beyond a routine medical emergency. Officer Gilbert, one of the first on scene, later testified about what he encountered in the cramped bathroom. Gabby lay on the floor, covered by a towel from the waist down. Her eyes were open and glazed over, showing no signs of life despite CPR attempts. "I noticed scalding and bruising all over her body," the officer recounted in his report. When he asked what had happened, Candice claimed ignorance, saying Gabby had been up all night and she didn't know what Gabby got into. As crime scene technicians processed the bathroom, they made horrifying discoveries that contradicted Candice's story. In the bathtub drain, they found what one detective described as a large amount of melted skin, physical evidence of the extreme temperature Gabby had been subjected to. Gabrielle had burns all over her body and bruising to her entire body, court documents stated. The burns were so severe that her big toe had completely detached from her foot, a detail that shocked even veteran investigators. The Washtenaw County Medical Examiner's findings painted a picture of prolonged, deliberate torture. Beyond the catastrophic burns, Gabby's body showed evidence of systematic abuse. Bruises in various stages of healing suggesting repeated beatings over time, signs of malnutrition and traumatic alopecia, hair that had been forcibly pulled out while she was alive. Vomit was found in her lungs, Judge Evans would later note during sentencing, indicating Gabby had aspirated during her final moments. The official cause of death was determined to be septic shock, her body overwhelmed by massive infection spreading from her untreated burns. Perhaps most disturbing were the signs of attempted evidence tampering. Forensic analysis suggested that Fields had methodically tried to destroy evidence of what they'd done. When he went to hide the evidence, Judge Evans stated during sentencing, he peeled burned skin off her body and placed it in a drain. The investigation revealed other signs of neglect and abuse that had been ongoing long before the fatal burns. Medical and dental records showed Gabby had received virtually no health care. Her teeth showed complete decay, a painful condition that would have made eating difficult and caused constant discomfort. Investigators also discovered that the couple had been administering medications to Gabby not to treat her pain, but to keep her compliant and quiet during abuse. Cell phones seized from the home contained text messages between Candice and Fields discussing beating Gabby, confirming that the physical abuse was not only known to both adults but actively encouraged. What investigators discovered in that bathroom went beyond what even seasoned law enforcement officers were prepared to face. The Washtenaw County Medical Examiner, with 27 years of forensic experience, would call it the worst child death case he ever encountered, a statement that speaks volumes about the deliberate cruelty inflicted on a defenseless 4-year-old girl. As detectives pieced together the timeline of Gabby's final hours, one thing became abundantly clear. Her death wasn't a tragic accident, but the culmination of months of escalating torture that could have been prevented had earlier warning signs been heeded. As investigators processed the horrific crime scene on New Year's Day, they quickly realized that Candice Diaz and Brad Fields were nowhere to be found. The couple had fled, abandoning the trailer and leaving behind the scene of their brutality. Within hours, authorities issued arrest warrants charging both with felony murder, second-degree murder, first-degree child abuse, and torture. The U.S. Marshals Service joined the manhunt, elevating the case to national priority. As details of Gabby's suffering began to emerge in the press, we knew they had a significant head start, U.S. Marshals Deputy Robert Watson later told reporters, but we also knew they would eventually make mistakes. The first breakthrough came when financial records showed activity on Diaz's debit card, purchases made at gas stations heading southbound on Interstate 75. The couple was clearly making a run for Florida, likely hoping to disappear in a tourist area where strangers wouldn't raise suspicion. What Fields and Diaz didn't realize was that every time they powered on their cell phones, they created digital footprints for authorities to follow. Cell tower pings tracked their movement across state lines from Michigan through Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, and into Georgia. They would periodically turn on their cell phones to use them, Sheriff Dale Malone later explained. This allowed investigators to ping their location. For 8 days, the couple remained on the run, making their way steadily south while the nation's attention focused on their capture. On January 9, 2018, their luck finally ran out near Lake Park, Georgia, just miles from the Florida state line. A routine traffic stop brought the nationwide manhunt to an end. Local police, alerted to be on the lookout for the couple's vehicle, spotted their car traveling on I-75. Law enforcement dashcam footage captured the moment of their arrest. Unlike Gabby's final moments of terror and pain, Diaz and Fields surrendered without incident, offering no resistance as officers placed them in handcuffs. The contrast was striking. The gentle handling of two adults accused of unimaginable cruelty toward a child. Neither asked about Gabby or showed any visible remorse. In January 2018, Candice Diaz and Brad Fields were extradited from Georgia back to Michigan to face justice. The Wayne County Prosecutor's Office charged both with felony murder, second-degree murder, torture, and first-degree child abuse. Fields faced additional conspiracy charges. Their cases moved through the system separately. Fields chose to stand trial. Prosecutors presented the text messages, forensic evidence, and medical testimony that painted a horrifying picture of Gabby's final months. In October 2018, after deliberating for just 4 hours, a jury convicted Brad Fields on all counts, including first-degree felony murder, a verdict that carried a mandatory life sentence without parole. At Fields' sentencing hearing, Judge Vonda Evans didn't hold back. "I have never seen a child sustain the injuries that Gabby Barrett sustained," she declared. She described Fields as a terrible king who ruled Gabby's home through violence and intimidation. "Brad, you're a murderer," Judge Evans said. She sentenced Fields to natural life in prison. Meanwhile, Candice Diaz pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and first-degree child abuse. At her sentencing, Judge Evans said, "Your beautiful daughter Gabby was a sacrifice you gave that bum Brad." Diaz received 30 to 60 years in prison. At the sentencing hearings, family members carried a photo book titled My Little Princess. Stephanie Barrett, Gabby's aunt, delivered a victim impact statement. "Every day we live in pain," she said. Kyle Barrett, Gabby's father, said the last time he saw her was in September 2017. Zoe, Gabby's half-sister, was removed from the home and placed in protective custody. Advocates later cited Gabby's case as evidence of systemic failures. In remembering Gabby Barrett, we must see beyond the horrific details of her death to recognize the child she was. A little girl who loved to hug her classmates, who sought warmth in a world that offered her so little. For Gabby, school was her only safe haven. In the words of Judge Evans, on New Year's Day she was free. And while we wish for a different kind of freedom for Gabby, a life of safety and love, we can honor her memory by paying attention, by speaking up, and by protecting the most vulnerable among us. We're grateful you're here. If you'd like to stay connected and continue exploring stories like this with us, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support helps keep this channel going.